You are live. You are live. You are live. Happy Friday. How is everybody doing? Yes, babe. What's up?
Nothing.
Nothing. So, got a lot of good stuff going on today. Celebrating wins, loving others as they can be, forgiving yourself so you can move forward and speaking it into existence. Got a lot to talk about today. Primarily some Friday celebration mindset shift. I know we've got just a lot of stuff constantly going on in the media, as it seems like it's just a nonstop something crazy going on and happening. And I guess when you're dealing with humans, that's the stuff that's going to happen, right? So I'm going to jump right in here. Not going to keep you long. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Forrest Knight. I'm a social media marketing beast and a coach. Have absolutely fun. So we're going to talk about celebrating wins. One of the things that we do in our marketing team over in Rank Makers every Friday, we do what we call Celebration Friday. Basically, we celebrate our wins. It's not to brag. It's just to lift ourselves up. One of the things that I found for some reason that we know, people will say, well, I only did X, or I only did this, or I only did that. That's not being humble. That's actually down talk. Celebrate your wins. I showed up this week. I did this many reach outs. I prospected this many people. I got this many no's. I showed up. I got out of bed. Whatever your win is, you've got to celebrate. You've got to pick a day to celebrate and realize, hey, I made it through this crappy relationship. Woo, woo, woo. It may have stunk. It may have been really horrible. Hey, I made it through this job. Hey, I got fired, but I'm still alive, right? So everything that we do, there's always a positive side to it. Sometimes, if we really think about this, sometimes if we really, really, truly look and examine what's happened, is a lot of times God will push us out of the nest because we're too scared to go. We're in a job and we're saying, not feeling comfortable, not this going on. Next thing you know, something happens and you're no longer out of work, but you happen to bump into somebody on the bus ride home, or maybe standing in line. You might overhear a conversation, or maybe they hear a conversation you have with somebody, say, hey, I'm hiring, and you end up getting a job because you wouldn't have been in that line at Quick Trip if you were at your normal job, right? Because you got fired. So you're standing in line, you get hired, you get this job. Next thing you know, you're like the executive CEO of something, or maybe you're in a better space, or maybe even better, maybe you're put in this new job because you have a story, you have some history, you have something going on, and you end up meeting somebody in this job, and you share with them your experience, strength, and hope, what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. You share that with them, and you give them hope, because maybe that person was thinking about committing suicide. So you never know why people are put in your path and what direction you're going to go in. So celebrating wins. Celebrate your wins. I've had a huge month. I just went over 1,000 personal customers. What? Crazy, crazy, crazy. Put in a ridiculous number of customers just since Sunday to hit that goal, because again, I've got a goal to hit 3,000, and I'll just leave them at that. 3,000 personal customers in my business, because I know two things. One, it's going to make a huge impact on their lives. Two, it's going to make a huge impact on my life. And I have a strange feeling I'll be pretty close to that number by the end of the year, because it's only May right now, baby. And basically we're not quite halfway. Actually, it's June. We're halfway through. So I've got to double up my efforts and go double the work here. So I'm at 1,000 basically halfway through the year, and I've got to put in two more thousand by December. I know I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to rock it out. So if you'd like to come rock with me, do some things, see what I'm doing, shoot me a private message, or get you hooked up, let you take a look at what I'm doing. If it's a fit for you, cool. If not, no big deal. At least you get to make an educated decision based on what you like and what you don't. I've got a really cool marketing system, really cool prospecting system, can really teach you what I'm doing. And if you get plugged in, I can't guarantee you're going to get the same results as I do, because you may not have the head down hustle that I have, but at least I can give you the tools to go out and do something, right? So loving others as they can be. Sometimes this is really, really hard. Sometimes you just want to throat punch somebody right in the freaking face, just like, dude, get out of my face. Sometimes we need to love people from a distance. You ever run into somebody, there's like, or maybe most of the time, they're a relative. There's somebody that's close to you, that you're related to them. You just have no idea why this person's even like in your life. Why do I have to deal with this person? What's going on? And by the way, well, I'm going to take a brief commercial interruption before I get dive too deep into that. This Sunday, I'm going to be giving this proven guide to grow your network marketing business. So if you'd like to participate, if you'd like to be entered to win, very, very cool booklet, definitely changed and made a huge impact I've got one that I carry around in my briefcase, and I use it. I use it a little bit different. There's a lot of great impactful stuff in there that I use every day, just like on this Facebook Live. Some of the tools that are in that book are some of the things that I do on a Facebook Live. It's sort of what we call the technology behind, or the systems process, the formula behind doing a Facebook Live. There we go. And I'll do that. But I also use the book to get ideas on things to talk about. And I'll flip through like, oh, I can talk about that. And I can go out and research and I can talk about that. So if you'd like to be entered to win the book, definitely do that. For those of you that saw my live last night, go watch the live last night. It's called Green Eggs and Ham. You'll absolutely dig it. Very, very cool topic. Definitely want to get into that. And I'm also got a really cool giveaway that I mentioned as well there. So giving away the booklet. If you'd like to participate, definitely jump in. Tell me what part of the country. If you're here joining me for the first time, tell me what part of the country you're joining me from. If you've been around for a while, just stop by, comment below, say hello, say how you doing. Make sure you guys check in or doing okay. So celebrating wins. Celebrate your win. Comment on it, talk about it, celebrate, pat yourself on the back, do a celebration video or whatever you need to do just to celebrate your win. And again, it's not being egotistical. It's not being big-headed to say, hey, I did this. I went out. I picked my head up. I did a fire down hustle. Want to get big results? We did a challenge at the beginning of this month to do 1,500 reach outs. I just went past 1,561 or something like that, whatever my number is. Got so many numbers in my head. Just past 1,000 customers, career customers, personal career customers, which is absolutely awesome. Got some absolutely cool team members coming on, which is absolutely cool deal. So the other half of this year is going to be absolutely exciting. So loving others as they can be. So how do you love somebody as they can be? And the way I like to look at this is sitting down. I remember in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, sometimes you got to sit down. And there's this guy named Gary. Don't worry about it. I'm not blowing his autonomy because there's a lot of Garys around. And you don't have a clue what meeting was in. But this guy, Gary, he came. I remember he come rolling into this meeting one night. And just so happens he sat right next to me. You could tell the dude was straight up off the street because he was dirty. His hair wasn't washed. His feet were about as black as you could get. This dude was a white guy, and he was just a mess. And he came walking into the meeting. This was in Hawaii. This was many years ago. So we're cool. I haven't been in Hawaii in 30 years, something like that. It's been a long time ago. Anyway, saying yes, I've got over 30 years of sobriety. So in this meeting, this was probably 28 years ago, something like that. I think I was about 2 years sober at the time when I met this guy. So he came and sat down in the meeting. Wow, that just feels like yesterday. Came and sat down in the meeting. He was an absolute mess. I mean, dude was a mess. And he just so happened he had sat right next to me. So I'm sitting here smelling this dude. It just smells like sewer, right? But the whole point of the AA meeting is you show up as you are, and you come there when you hit your bottom, whatever that bottom is. The bottom might be somebody like Gary who just literally ended up on the street and just an absolute mess, or it might be somebody whose bottom was maybe they lost a job, maybe they got a divorce, maybe who knows, whatever it is. The bottom is different for everybody. So I remember looking at this guy and I was thinking about, man, what a mess. But the funny thing about it was he was the guy that was easy to see that his life was a wreck, right? He was a wreck. But I remember there was this other guy in the meeting that constantly sort of interrupted people when they were talking. And you're one of the guidelines or protocols or whatever, the etiquette of the meeting was you don't overtalk somebody when they're talking. You sort of talk on your turn. It's almost like you raise your hand and people can get called on, and it's like a respect thing. And he would constantly just like constantly big shot, talk, and he would constantly do this. And I mean, I would sit there and I remember talking to my sponsor. I said, dude, I swear I'm going to tell this guy to just like, I just want to get in his face and tell him to shut up. And I remember my sponsor saying, hey, sometimes you just have to love people where they're at and let them grow as they need to grow. And that was hard because I felt like he was interrupting other people's growth. But what I didn't realize is when I sat on my hands and I zipped my mouth and I just listened, right? I sort of listened around him and I watched him grow. And eventually it was funny. He started showing up and started shutting up. And he realized that because he kept going back out, he kept talking and he kept going back out. And I don't know if somebody had said something to him or maybe his head just came out of his rectum or whatever it was. But I think he had an awakening moment. And sometimes you have to have an awakening. Sometimes you just have to love people at a distance. You have to love them where they are and love them as they can be, not necessarily as they are. So that's one of the things that's very, very important. Sometimes there are relatives in our lives who are just an absolute wreck. Doesn't mean you can't love them, but you don't have to You don't have to like them. You don't have to tolerate them. You can basically, you don't have to have them in your space. You just have to let them, love them as they are, and hope that God will come in, and pray to God that he will restore them and heal them and move them to a different place, right? So very, very important. Forgiving yourself so you can move on. This is hard. This is a hard one for a lot of people. I know it was very hard for me to forgive myself for some of the stuff that I did, because I would constantly beat myself up. I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to being hard on myself. I mean, if I would make a mistake, I would come at me, and you'll notice up on my banner on Facebook here, it says love yourself. And sometimes you've got to love yourself first. Love yourself first. Once you decide, thanks, Jennifer. So once you decide to love yourself first, it's an absolutely amazing thing that what you can do. So I remember, and I talk a lot about empty refrigerators. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes you wish you had a dad and all this kind of stuff. And I'll get into that story one of these days. I'll talk about that. But I remember, it's so ironic. I remember calling my dad on the phone one day. I don't remember what it was, but I lived in San Francisco, and I called him to ask him something. And he was drunk like he normally was. He had no idea who I was. And I'm grown. I'm in the Navy. I'm talking to him. He has no idea. He has no idea who I am. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, well, that sucks. So my whole goal at the time, right before he passed away, was, hey, I'm going to do this. And I was over in the Persian Gulf when they're doing the Gulf Wars. We had just been down in South America doing counter narcotics ops, killing drug guys, just like in a Tom Clancy Mission Impossible type kind of deal, down there, running intercepts and things on drug ops and drug boats and things like that. Instead of coming back, we ended up getting redirected and heading over to the Second Gulf War. And I remember, this was right before my son was born, so this has been 29 years ago, something like that. And I remember saying to myself, it would be very, very cool if I could get a chance to, I want to talk to my dad. I would really love to talk to my dad before he passes away. Or I didn't even say passes away. My goal was to just talk to him when I got back from being in the Gulf War. Was the goal. So we got over there. We're floating around the Gulf War, and I get this message that came over that my father had passed away, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? That really sucks." So it was ironic, because my goal was I wanted to have a meeting with him. I wanted to sit down with him. I just wanted to find out about him. I just wanted to talk to him. I just wanted to learn who he was. But primarily, I wanted to ask him why he didn't show up, why he wasn't a dad, why he wasn't there, why he wasn't available. And I got a big, huge resentment over that. And I carried that for a little while with me. And sometimes I took it out on some other people. And what I figured out was I needed to forgive myself. If I was going to be able to forgive him, I needed to be able to forgive myself for all the things that I had done. And once I did that, once I forgave myself and said, you know what, I don't have to beat myself up so much. It's okay. It's absolutely okay that you didn't get a chance to talk to your dad and figure out why he was such a jerk. It was absolutely okay. And it took a while, and it finally transitioned to a point where it went to neutral zone. I went neutral, and now it's just my dad. It's just who he was, and whatever the deal was that he went through. It would have been nice to hear his story as a kid. I never got to learn any of that stuff because he just wasn't around, right? It would have been nice to know, what he liked to do. I know he's a cook, which is funny. I'm a really good cook, but never learned it from him. Maybe it's just a genetic or something, but he was a cook. I'm a really good cook. I love to cook. The funny thing about it was that was one of those things I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to learn to forgive myself about the crazy drinking that I was doing and all the crappy, crazy stuff that I did when I was drinking. And it's like, man, I have to forgive myself for that. I had to forgive myself for putting myself into bad relationships, and realizing that, I was a contributing factor to that bad relationship. So learning to love myself, forgiving myself, and then learning to love myself was very, very important, which was very, very cool. So number 4. Number 4, the thing that I found, this is freaking awesome. And this isn't magic. It isn't magical. It's when you understand, and when you get this, and when you understand your purpose. A really cool book is Purpose Driven Life. A lot of stuff out there, but when you can figure out how to manifest your destiny. I started reading some stuff on this recently, and freaking mind-blowing ability to speak yourself into action. And then when you speak yourself into action, the action actually sort of flows forward through time and creates an event. I'm telling you, this is some real stuff. Getting a little bit emotional here. I'm getting a little bit emotional here. I got to tell you this, guys, because every time you speak something into result, I gotta go back in time here because this is awesome. So I don't remember the actual date because it's been so long ago, but I do remember this. I was sitting in a Borders bookstore when they were still open, and I saw the Success magazine that had Anthony Robbins in it. So I picked it up and I started reading through it. I think I was working in financial services at the time, doing annuities and mutual funds and stuff like that, a securities license. I believe that's what I was doing at the time. And I was sitting at the bookstore, and my whole goal to go to the bookstore was to prospect some people and actually invite them to a workshop that we had called How Money Works. And we would invite people to How Money Works and pick up clients and things like that. Anyway, so it's the middle afternoon, I'm sitting in the bookstore and I pick up the Success magazine, which I still have. And I open it up and I'm reading this story about this guy named Anthony Robbins. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And he tells this story, and I'm going through reading this. And then I look up some of his books. So I buy his book, Unlimited Power, The Power to Influence, 7 Habits of Highly Effective. No, that's not it. Gosh, dang it. There's a couple other books that are very, very cool. And I started reading these books. One talks about neuro-linguistic programming and the ability to use that system to stop bad habits that you have. So I really immersed myself in this. But the thing that I said to myself, and speaking it into existence, was I didn't even realize that I was going to manifest this down the road. When I opened up this and I started reading this article, I said to myself, I want to do what he does. Right? I said, I want to do what he does. And I put it out into the universe. And I didn't even realize it. But when I did that, I also put it into my subconscious, because I carried this magazine around with me, and I would go back and I would read the article and I would read the books, and I basically immersed myself into his thought process and his story. And I remember one of the stories that he told, how he was invited to speak at this event, and he was in a helicopter and he was to fly into an event, and he looked down and he saw all these cars that were just jam-packed on the road. And he figured out what's going on down there, what's happening down there. And he realized that when he got to an event, there was all the people trying to get to his event, right? And that was like a growth moment for him. And he realized that he had just moved up to the next level. And to fast forward this, I said this, man, how many years ago was that? See, my son was actually young at the time, so I'm thinking that was probably 24 years ago, maybe something like that, 23, 24 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. And I said that, I put it out there into the universe. I went down, I went to work, and I've been in the entrepreneur mode all the time. I want to do this, I want to help that. And I've never been afraid of getting up in front of a room and sharing my experience, strength, and hope. So all of that put together, and I didn't realize that a lot of things had been put into place into my life. One was being selected to be a naval gunfire support instructor in the Navy, where they send you to 6 weeks of training on how to be an instructor, how to teach a class, how to get in front of the room, how to do a presentation. I didn't realize that God gave me that tool and put it in my tool belt for me to use later. So all this stuff is adding up. All this stuff is moving forward, right? So the moral of the story was, when I said I didn't say I wanted to be him. I didn't say I wanted to be like him. I said I wanted to do what he does, right? So you got to be very careful what you say when you put it out there into the universe. But I felt it. I ate it up. I ate it, drank it, and slept it. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I talked about it. I got in. I actually worked for one of his franchises in Hawaii for a little bit, because that's what I wanted to do. I can't even. Wow, it's been a while. I'll refresh myself and come back to that. But I worked for his franchise for a little bit, selling sales training seminars, and we would go in and do these weekend workshops where we'd have several hundred people in the room, and we'd go in and do like the breakthrough seminars, breakthrough workshops where we broke boards and things like that. And we'd come people, and you could see people just elevate to the next level, right? It was so cool. I remember this one real estate agent. She was about 150 million years old, little frail little old lady. And what you did on these breakthrough boards, right? You wrote on one side what you wanted to overcome, and you wrote on the other side what you were going to do to get through. And it was just a pine board, and you taught the guys how to punch. You punch it with your bare hand. You teach them how to punch through the board, and they would break the board. And of course, it was a It was like moving forward. And you would see some of the biggest dudes in the world come up and they were afraid to punch the board. They wouldn't punch the board. They wouldn't punch the board. But I remember this little frail lady. I swear she weighed like 102 pounds, soaking wet. A little old lady. She comes up there and she has tears in her eyes. She's got this big, huge moment. She's like, I forgot what she wrote on the board, but she sat down and she wrote it. And she circled it around and she was just determined to do this. And I held up the board and held up the board for her and I looked her right in her eyes. And I said, I want you to hit me right in the chest. I want you to focus on my chest when you go after this board. Now, the board's out here. I said, focus on my chest. Focus on my chest. Try to punch me in the chest. Try to punch me in the chest. She lays back on that board. She came clean through the board. She came clear and hit me in the chest. She went through that board. The room freaking erupted in explosions. Because you got to understand the visual here, right? You've got these big, huge grown men in the room that are afraid to hit the board and break through the board. Meanwhile, you've got this small, frail old lady that does this. And for me, I was like, just freaking felt awesome to see the power and to see the release that she had when she did that breakthrough. It was absolutely amazing to be able to do that. So when you have things like that in your life and empower you, now here's the moral of my story, speaking it into existence. This past October, I had no idea this was going to happen. This is very cool. My wife and I were at a Rankmakers event called Rankmakers Live Social Media Summit down in Orlando. And here's the funny thing about it was my wife didn't want to go, right? But I had bought tickets and I had bought everything for her to go with me. And she came with me reluctantly. And she sat in the room and she realized it wasn't a typical network marketing, rah, fluff deal. It was business. Now, my wife has two sides. She has like a total fun-loving yellow, blue side, and then she has a red side that's like beast mode. And she got in the room and she would go back and forth. People just fall in love with my wife instantly. But she was in the room and she was like, this is completely different than what I expected it to be. This is really cool. This is nice. This is a really good event. And that's all she said. Like, I was like, I had to look at my wife like, is this my wife that's actually here with me or somebody else? But to make a long story short, towards the end of the event, they reached out and asked for people that wanted to participate or move into the 100K Inner Circle coaching program. Now, I was sitting there thinking to myself, I don't know, it's something I want to do, but I'm not sure if I want to do it right now. And my wife, Devon, she sort of taps me on the shoulder and says, we're going to do this coaching thing, right? And it was like a question statement with a nod. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So we talked about it for a minute, went back, signed up, got started, and got into the coaching program. But here, let me rewind this back a little bit. Before getting into the coaching program, they had a panel of women up on the board of coaches that were coaches and people that brought up on stage. And Ray was interviewing them at the time, and he says this. He says, man, it's amazing we got all these women up here. One of these days we're gonna have to get some guys up on board. And I felt it was a challenge. I'm sort of competitive a little bit. And what did I say, wife? I'm gonna be up on stage next year. That's what I said. That's what I put out into the universe. I said I'm gonna be up on stage, and I said it with such confidence. I didn't think about it. Just like I said, I was into the Anthony Robbins thing. I'm gonna do what he does one day, right? That was my whole goal. So, and I put it out there. And next thing you know, I'm in the coaching program. I'm going through the coaching program. And next thing you know, they invite me to be a coach. I'm going to leave it right there. You put it out into the universe. And I'm not talking about some hokey way. You've got to have a head down mission to understand where you're going. I'm very competitive. As a matter of fact, I'm so competitive, I have to turn it down a little bit because some people take my competitive as being arrogant. Because I push them and I'm putting them like Doc Gardner's on here right now. She took me up on the 1500 reach out challenge. Well, she just hit 1500 and she took me up on the challenge. So I'm one of these kind of guys. If you're going to come to play, don't ever sit down at a game of dominoes with me and tell me you're going to beat my butt, because it's going to be very hard to do that because I'm very competitive. I may let you win, wife.
I know you say you let me win.
I may let you win because a lot of times I have to back the competitive side up because some people get their feelings hurt.
You said you let me win, but I know I won because I played the game.
I like that bag.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's cute. She talks a lot of smack. So the moral of the story is I'm very, very competitive and I love to win. But more importantly, when I say I want to make an impact on people's lives, it's not just about the people on my team. It's being able to get, and this isn't being arrogant, it's just when you get messages from people that say, thanks, man, I went to your training, I used your training, I've done more prospecting this week than I've ever done in my life. I feel really confident. Thank you very much. You get those kind of messages, it's I've made an impact. You get an impact from somebody that says, hey man, I listened to your training, I reached out to somebody and I got my very first freaking customer. I got my very first teammate. That's a freaking win. That's a win all day long. And when we put our head down and we decide we're going to show up, forget all the crap out there in the world. We need to put our head down, figure out where we want to go. The cool thing about this, you guys, and I know it's coming, crap happens when you're on your mission. And the reason it is because I've got a big mission to impact thousands and thousands of people's lives. And I know around the corner something's going to happen, but I can't let that distract me, right? That means I've got to plug more in. I've got to put my head down even a bit more. And it's absolutely very, very important that to be able to put your head down and put it in a win place to move on to the next level, that you can do that. So I just wanted to share this with you. Celebrate your wins. Absolutely celebrate your wins, and don't do it in an arrogant way. Do it in a way that you deserve it. Do it in a way that you showed up and you hustled. And don't compare yourself to what somebody else did. That's not what's really important. Don't compare yourself to what someone else did. Compare yourself to where you were at this time last year. Compare yourself to where you were this time last month. Compare yourself to where you were this time yesterday. You know, celebrate the wins. You can celebrate them. Sometimes you need to celebrate them every second. I did, for example, and sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous, when you're new in recovery, you got to celebrate every single minute that you didn't take a drink. And then it becomes a day, and then it becomes a week, and then it becomes a month, and then it becomes 90 days, it becomes 60 days, and it becomes a year, then it becomes 2 years, and it becomes 3 years, but you do it one day at a time, right? That's the same thing with celebrating wins. Sometimes you just need to celebrate a win one day at a time. Hey, I got up, I reached out to some people today. Hey, I got up and I reached out to 2 people today. Hey, I got up and I reached out to 3 people today. Hey, I got up and I did a Facebook Live today. Hey, I got up and I did a follow-up today. Right? Whatever it is, sometimes you just got to celebrate the little wins until they become a habit, and then your habit becomes really, you become really, really good at it, right? So I know I've been on here a little bit, just had a lot on my heart that I wanted to talk to and share with you. Again, if you're in a network marketing, affiliate marketing or something, and you figure out that you can't quite wrap your head around something, shoot me a private message and say you want the proven guide to grow your network marketing business. I'll definitely get you put on the list. I guess you want to put it on the list. Put your name in the hat. I'm going to do a drawing on Sunday. Also, for those of you that entered or entering to win the $50 that are in that contest, we'll talk about that again tomorrow on my Facebook Live. So I want to give away another $50. So we'll see who entered to do that. I'm going to spin the wheel, and somebody's going to win $50. Jennifer Gonzalez won last week. So absolutely excited about doing that. I'm going to get out of your face. This is Forrest out in St. Louis. I love you. Jesus loves you. There's absolutely nothing to do about it. No more empty refrigerators. Go out and make an extreme impact. Peace out. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.